All right, Texas Longhorns trying to hold on to a top five class as we head into National Signing Day, just a couple of days away. Here to break down the Longhorns class with me before signing day is Horns 24/7 recruiting analysts Hank South and Jordan Scruggs. Guys, appreciate you making some time. So, Texas flips Xavier Filsaime earlier today. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall outlook for this class, when you look at it from head to toe, guys, what are your overall impressions and just overall thoughts on Steve Sarkisian's third straight top five class?
Yeah, I think you look at it, and it fills a lot of needs. From top to bottom is not just they went heavy in this one area and they hit big there. They just hit big across the board. Offensive line, edge rusher, defensive back, wide receiver. This is a really strong top to bottom class, and that you can make a few exceptions, obviously, with guys like Micah Hudson or Corey and Gibson, but for the most part, they hit on the guys they wanted. They didn't have a lot of misses, and I think that's a testament to the staff and their ability to recruit, and obviously the production on the field, and that paying off on the recruiting trail as well. So I think top to bottom it fills the needs. There's a lot to be excited about, and the last thing I'll say about it is there's really hasn't been a lot of drama in terms of once the guys commit. There was all that talk. Ryan Wingo was eventually going to flip to Mizzou. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Was Colin Simmons going to visit LSU? That never happened. There just really isn't a lot of drama to the finish line. And knock on wood, I don't want to like jinx Texas or anything, but I think that's been a big notable thing. They've gotten these guys to commit, and this class has been locked in and ready to go.
Yeah, capitalize on what Hank said. He hit it out of the park. But what I've loved about the way that this staff has recruited since arriving in Austin, it's almost like they identify what's their weakest position group and kind of take it personal recruiting that position group. In 2021 with the 2022 class, it was the offensive line group, and they signed DJ Campbell and Kelvin Banks, among Cole Hudson, Cam Williams, Nato Zulu, Connor Robinson, the list goes on. The next year, they doubled back and got linebackers and signed the best linebacker class in America with Anthony Hill, Samaje Burrell, Leonga Lafau. You can even bunch Jelani McDonald in there as part of that class originally. Now this year, it's defensive backs. They got Kobe Black, who was like the guy from the jump. He was the guy that Texas was focused on and targeting since his sophomore year, and they got him. Then they doubled back, swung late, but they hit on Filsaime and they got him. And that's not even bringing up Wardell Mack, Santana Wilson, Jordan Johnson, Ubell, or any of those guys either. But it's safe to say Texas has the best defensive back class in America. And, Texas takes it personal and they come out on top.
Yeah, Jordan, really like that point just because that leads into my next question perfectly. You mentioned in the past they've recruited at positions of need. They do that again in this cycle, but it's not necessarily just defensive back. You look at defensive line as well, even wide receiver with guys going off to the draft after having phenomenal years. So not only is that a good recruiting pitch, but when you look at those positions or maybe some others, who are a couple of guys that you are all looking at and saying, yeah, this is a guy who can really have a big impact on the Longhorns in his freshman season?
Yeah, for me, it's Xavier Filsaime. There isn't a type of athlete that Texas has signed a defensive back like Xavier Filsaime. I know Derek Williams is special coming out of high school, but he wasn't clocked running under 10.6 multiple times like Filsaime has. He's truly a special athlete that's going to hover and roam around on the back end. And again, Texas hasn't had somebody like that since I don't know when. So whenever you have athletes like that that can make that big of an impact, even though they are true freshmen, there will be some growing pains. You're going to figure out ways to get them involved in the mix. And that's pretty much exactly what happened with Anthony Hill this year.
Yeah, for me, and I'm going to go on the offensive side of the ball. And, I know it's hard for, freshmen to come in and contribute right away at skill positions, particularly. We saw CJ Baxter start the season at running back before Jonathan Brooks really took over. Obviously, he's had a big role in the offense all year. We haven't really seen John Tay Cook, really, uh, you know, show out like maybe we thought he would back in fall camp when he was having a strong camp. I think he still has a bright future, but I'm going Ryan Wingo. You look at this situation Texas is going to enter the SEC with. Obviously, Matthew Golden over the weekend, huge addition. He's going to play day one. He's going to be one of the guys. Beyond him, there's opportunities for young guys to come in and contribute. Again, I think Jonte Cook's going to step up. DeAndre Moore, Ryan Niblett, there's guys that can step up, but I think Wingo has an opportunity to come in and really kind of showcase what he can do, what made him so coveted for Texas, and that's with Texas recruiting him so hard. I think it's just his versatility, what he can offer this offense. I've seen comps to AJ Brown, Debo Samuel. I know Jordan Debo Samuel, a guy he likes, but I think he can do a lot of different things, and I think that versatility and ability is something that's going to be an asset for him and potentially seeing the field early.
Hank, you mentioned earlier how Ryan Wingo is one of the guys we maybe thought would be on Flip Watch to Mizzou, but Texas does a good job of holding that off, and really there hasn't been a lot of drama this cycle. Well, that's 4 Texas commits. With Texas trying to get commits, there's been a ton of drama. I mean, we saw it earlier today with Xavier Filsaime flipping his commitment from Florida to the Longhorns. When I think of last year, I think of Anthony Hill flipping late from Texas A&M to Texas. So Steve Sarkisian and this Texas staff have earned a reputation of flipping guys late, of playing till the buzzer. And it seems like that may be the case still for a couple of guys here down the stretch. When you look at some flip candidates remaining on the board, who do you see for Texas, and how do you like the Longhorns' chances?
Yeah, it's been funny. The past, I feel all fall, like we've been doing like target breakdowns and who's next, and it's always been guys that are committed elsewhere. Texas just they haven't given up on these guys, even if they've committed. And some guys like DeAndre Carter, the offensive lineman that was committed to Auburn. He reaffirmed things, he shut it down. So there's certain times you do move on because you don't want to waste your time and keep swinging if it's not going to be worth your time. But guys that ahead of Wednesday, I think the number one guy both Jordan and I would say is Ty Anthony Smith, the linebacker committed to Texas A&M. There's been, since Jimbo Fisher was let go in College Station, originally it looked like, it was only a matter of time with Ty Anthony Smith, and then Mike Elko gets hired. Maybe, what he was saying obviously was, he felt comfortable with A&M, he was locked in, but then, Steve Wilfong was here and over the weekend. He was on campus in Austin, took his official visit. And now the crystal ball, Jordan and my prediction, have flipped over to Texas, and we think this staff's going to get it done, and that's without a linebackers coach at the moment. They have everyone else intact, but they've been able to stay after him even with Jeff Choate moving on to Nevada. So I think Ty Anthony Smith, another guy. And I don't want to take all the guys from Jordan in this segment, but Alex Foster is another one, the Baylor defensive line commit. He was a guy Texas offered this fall, and it looks, he actually announced on Sunday night he's going to wait until February to sign. So there could be some, a handful of guys we're actually tracking to February. Usually that's not the case as much. You're kind of more focused on portal guys after the early signing period nowadays, but there's a handful of guys, Alex Foster being one of them, that said he's going to wait until February. He's committed to Baylor, but looks like he wants to keep his options open. We spoke with him after his official visit to Austin this past weekend, and he said Texas's chances are really high. And I had Baylor fans quote tweeting me, it's over, they're giving up. It was pretty funny to watch the reaction. But again, he's still saying he's committed to Baylor. He's going to give them more time, but he's also going to look at his options. So I think Alex Foster is another one we're going to keep an eye on down the stretch.
Yeah, 2 names I have actually both happen to be 5 stars. First we'll go Dominic McKinley. He's going to push it back and sign in February, or at least that's what he's saying right now. That can always change with signing day less than 48 hours away. But for now, it's looking like he's going to sign in February. Texas finished behind Texas A&M originally, and he's still committed to the Aggies. But, multiple schools are going to come in home and take their swing at him and trying to flip a 5-star defensive lineman. Texas seems to be kind of out of the mix in terms of the realistic schools that could have a chance at flipping them right now. But we've seen Sark and his coaching staff make magic happen down the stretch when it's needed most. The other one I want to talk about is Terry Bussey. Blake Gideon, the Texas safeties coach, is in the house at AT&T Stadium for Terry Bussey's state championship game on Wednesday night. Terry won offensive MVP and had a great game and got to do it in front of Gideon. Texas is high on Bussey, but there are some different questions about positional fit long term, and there are other schools that were just flat out doing a better job of recruiting him the first time around. So he's pushing it back to February and is going to take visits, or told 24/7 Sports that he'd like to take visits to USC, Alabama, LSU, and back to Texas A&M again. Did not mention Texas, but there is a tiny bit of contact there, and it's something I'm watching.
All right, and so we'll close things out here with the transfer portal. Transfers don't have to have their decision made on Wednesday, but still kind of important to keep an eye on them as they're important to how the roster as a whole is constructed. Texas already has 2 transfer players in the fold with Matthew Golden from Houston and Andrew Makuba earlier today from Clemson. Fellas, when you look at the rest of the portal outlook for the Longhorns, the both of you have crystal ball picks in for UTSA edge Trey Moore. So that's a name, obviously, that Longhorn fans need to keep an eye on. With him, is there anybody else, maybe a different position group that you're thinking the Longhorns may try to target as this portal window kind of continues to trudge on?
Yeah, and before we move on to it, I don't think you can say enough about the 2 additions they have in Matthew Golden and Andrew Makuba. As soon as both those guys entered the portal, that was, we wrote with Makuba, that should be Texas's number 1 portal target with everything, that tied him to Austin, whether just being from Austin, going to LBJ, playing under Jamal Finner, who's now on the staff at Texas, and Texas needing safeties. We've seen a handful of guys enter the portal, just standard attrition with other guys. And Jalen Catalan was kind of surprised. But to go out and get, a guy that's been a freshman All-American that has 3 years of experience starting and just a playmaker that can come in and provide some veteran leadership in that back end where Texas has been a little vulnerable in 2023 is huge. And then obviously Matthew Golden, we saw what he did to Texas alone, 2 touchdowns, a playmaker at wide receiver, a guy that come in, he's going to play day one. We've seen how that's been with Adonai Mitchell. I think Matthew Golden could have a similar impact in terms of, the what he can bring to the Texas offense in 2024. Beyond that, I'll be curious to see. I think Texas is certainly, they dot all their I's, they cross all their T's with the portal, they do their due diligence. And, I think you could still make the case for potentially another wide receiver. I don't think there's enough skill guys entering the SEC to load up on those. Perhaps defensive line. That could be an area depending on, who's out there, who they feel they could be in with. There's been guys like, Walter Nolan that's been Texas has reached out to, Jamari Caldwell from Houston. So that's an option as well too. But, I think that's 2 areas we could look at. And then obviously the 2 guys they got are huge.
Yeah, the guy I'll touch on is UTSA's edge transfer from UTSA, Trey Moore. Since the day he entered the portal, sources are very adamant that growing up in Smithson Valley in the San Antonio area, he was a fan of the Longhorns, and that's where he's wanted to go since, he made up his mind on entering the portal. He took a visit to Texas the December 8th through 10th weekend, and this past weekend was out of Alabama for a visit. And while Alabama is giving him a lot to think about, as you'd expect, Texas still seems to be trending here, according to all the sources I've spoken with throughout the last week. And, coming out of the Alabama visit, Texas seems to be in a really good spot here to get Trey Moore, who's, the best edge that they've had a shot at in the portal. They were going to get Tyler Barron on campus. He ended up committing to Ole Miss before taking a visit to Texas. So, Trey Moore seems to be the guy that the staff will turn all their attention to finish out the portal season strong.
All right, good nuggets there, fellas. Really appreciate your time and taking some time to talk to the Horns 24/7 community about National Signing Day. Everyone, there is no better place to be than horns247.com throughout the rest of this week and going forward. Make sure you stick around for transfer portal news, signing day news, and all the happenings regarding recruiting. There's no better team than Hank South and Jordan Scruggs. Guys, again, thanks for being here. And thank you all for watching with us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For the guys, I'm Tommy Yarrish. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you next time.